So can you please share with me your name?
My name is Xylar.
And Xylar, how old are you?
26.
Can you tell me, how do you identify yourself?
I'm human. I'm Irish and Mexican, or Spanish as my father says. But I would describe myself as a tranny.
Can you tell me, what is your story of HIV just in general?
Okay, so my story with HIV is, before I was ever diagnosed with HIV, I was really very much aware of what HIV was. I grew up Southern Baptist, so HIV was God's curse for homosexuality. I don't know, but anyways, I met this guy, and he started seeing me, and he ended up moving into my apartment. We were dating for about 6 months. He kept insisting on having unprotected sex, and so I told him the only way to do that is if you get tested. And I got tested, and I brought my paperwork, and I told him where to go get tested. He brought me back paperwork. It said negative. I didn't look at the birth date, and at this point in time I also hadn't looked at his driver's license. But we ended up getting into a physical altercation, and he left the house. My brother was walking down the alley at the same time he was walking down the alley to go to the corner store after I had already called the cops. And my brother beat the shit out of him, really, really, really bad. But whenever the paramedics got there, he told the paramedics that I'm HIV positive. And the police overheard, and they came to me and they asked me, they asked me his name, they asked me how old I thought he was, and I thought his name was Ryan, and I thought he was 27. Turns out he was actually 34 at the time. And so nothing that he told me was true. I knew right away, I'm HIV positive. Because at this point in time, it's April. We had been having unprotected sex since January. There's just no way. There's no way that I'm not infected. I knew it. And I had always told myself before that, if I ever get HIV, I'll probably just kill myself. Because, I saw movies with people who had HIV. If they weren't dying from AIDS, the medications were killing them, and it was just horrible. And so I didn't really want to deal with any of it, period. But I had a dog at the time, and so that's why I would I wouldn't let myself kill myself, because I was who's gonna take care of this dog? It's so fucking cute. I don't know, it's a dog. I had to be there to take care of the dog, so that meant that I was gonna have to face this situation. It was May 20th, 2008 that I got the results back, and they were positive. It was really weird. I told myself, you're lucky or you didn't get it sooner. But at the same time, it really hurt, because I didn't think anybody would do that, and I especially didn't think that I was gonna be stupid enough to be on the receiving end of it.
Transgender people have higher rates of infection, especially here in the state of New Mexico. Why do you think that is?
I would probably say that a leading cause might be low self-esteem within the transgender community. I know growing up I had it really rough, and in society, I know that the way people perceive us is just and the way a lot of girls exploit themselves is to be overly sexual. And I think a lot of the low self-esteem comes from the being teased and cast away from their families. It's even if these girls are aware of what they're doing and their actions that they're taking by having unprotected sex, and they are for the most part persistent with wanting people that use condoms, in prostitution scenarios, it's harder for them to insist that the customer wear a condom, because if they're prostituting, they need the money. Obviously they're at a desperate point, so they'll make mistakes that way, or they'll take risks in that sense. And a lot of times drugs come into play, and that also clouds people's decision as to whether or not to protect themselves. And
you talked a little bit about prostitution. Is that a big problem in the transgender community, especially male to female transgender community?
I would say prostitution is almost an epidemic within the transgender male to female community, because there is a lot of discrimination that transgender girls face. I can't say that I've never faced the discrimination, because I have in fact had to go through the EEOC in order to declare that the treatment I was receiving was discrimination based on gender identification. But a lot of times, it's the only job that they can get, because a lot of the mentality is that, well, if it's a customer service job where you're going to be dealing with people, they don't want a transgender to represent their company, because what does that say about their moral values or where they stand? But it's an epidemic because like so many, I would say probably around like 80% of transgender girls end up into prostitution at one point in time or another, to make things work. And also because I would say it's an easy road for a lot of girls, because when you get kicked out of your family and like you're outcast and you don't have anywhere to go or anything to do, and like especially for around Albuquerque, like the street Central is like the most notorious street in Albuquerque. So like you're gonna be drawn towards it one way or another, and it's gonna come about. I mean, like it's the oldest job in the book, so there's a reason for that.
You mentioned having to report to the EEOC. Can you tell me a little bit either about that incident or another incident of discrimination that you've experienced because of any identity?
Well, at that point in time, I was working at a multi-billion-dollar corporation franchise here in Albuquerque. I'm fairly certain the only reason I got the job was because as a boy, the manager wanted to sleep with me. He was an older Hispanic male, gay, but in the closet, like a lot of older Hispanic males are. The way it came about is like the more comfortable I got with my sexuality and the more comfortable I got with what I call removing the oppressive opinions of society and my family and just everyone around me, I embraced more of like the feelings that I had when I was younger, like because when I would always cross-dress, or as it were, I always thought when I was a little boy, I always thought I would grow up with boobs. So like the more comfortable I got with myself and exploring myself, like I realized this is how I wanted to do. I started wearing makeup to work, and it became a problem, and they started making me wash it off. But I needed the hours, I needed the money. I had already quit that job one time because of the sexual advances from the manager. And so I knew the laws. I knew that in New Mexico, I was protected against discrimination for gender identification or sexual orientation. And I had explained to them, like, this was discrimination, that you can't make me wash off my makeup because you let the females here wear makeup. And even at that time, I would wear female pants. And during a corporate inspection, one of the people, they were like mocking me and asked me what size of pants I was wearing, and I told them that they were a size 2, and they said those are females, you can't wear those, and you need to wear a hat instead of a visor, which I had purchased the visor. So I was like, if the females can wear hats, why can't I wear a visor, and why can't I wear makeup? But they just weren't having it. By going through the EEOC, or the Equal Employment Opportunity Coalition, I originally called the Albuquerque office, and they said, call Santa Fe. You sound like you have a pretty solid case, so just call Santa Fe. That way they can start the paperwork and it'll stay with them, because eventually you're going to have to deal with them anyways. After about 2 years of dealing with that and having to deal with retaliation on the job site and then eventually having to quit, in the end I ended up settling. They admitted guilt, but that was that.
So tell me a little bit about some of the changes in your, like, that you've had to make in your life because you're HIV positive.
There's actually been like a lot of changes. I mean, I still have some changes to make. I don't know. I was always sort of like weary of drugs, especially after going to so many psychiatrists and being like what I felt like was experimented on with different antidepressants and anti-anxieties, and I just had like an aversion to doctors and medicine in general. At first, I had the pills actually for a couple months before I even started taking them. I was so leery of it that I figured, one way or another, I'm gonna die. And then whenever I started experiencing the side effects from the pills, like, I had a lot of discouraging thoughts. I mean, if you're gonna die from the disease or if you're gonna die from the medication, it kind of feels like, what's the point? Like, either way, something's gonna be catastrophic. So. But fortunately, I haven't had any adverse reactions or side effects to the Complera. My T cells are actually higher than they've ever been.
Before your diagnosis, could you tell me the top 5 stressful things going on in your life then? And now, what are the top 5 stressful things in your life now?
Before diagnosis, it was family, money, sex, relationships, and self-discipline were probably my top 5 stressors. After diagnosis, or like during diagnosis, my top 5 stressors were definitely HIV. How much food I was like forcing myself to eat to try to stay healthy. Being positive I would say that was really hard. Just being happy. And a huge stressor was like, I felt like I was tainted, like I was gonna be like an unsellable product. Like, I thought I was ruined.
What else do you want to share about your story?
If I could ask everybody to do one thing, it would just be like focus harder on being one with each other. Like, it always comes back to like, it's a human thing, and like no matter where you are or what you're wearing or doing or believe in, like HIV is a human concern. But as like we see today, like where we have HIV cases all around the world in every walk of life and every color and every sex, like it's quite clearly a concern for the world as a human issue. Yeah, that's me. One people, one planet.